What's your "oh, you're not joking" moment? I work at a hotel. We have this regular who comes, but usually makes reservations ahead of time, and she has her favorite room she tries to get. Well, one day she walked in, asking for a room. I had rooms available, but not the one she wanted, and she replied, "Oh, call the guests in that room and tell them to move out so I can have it." I seriously thought that was a joke and I played along, saying I'll get right on that, as I was getting her info in the computer. All of a sudden she said, "Aren't you going to call them?" "Call who?" "Those guests in that room so I can have it." "Oh, you really weren't joking." I told her that we don't do that. If she wanted that room she needed to call ahead. "I have a room, I know it's not your preferred room but it's all I've got, and you can take it or leave it, but I'm not moving a guest out." She seemed almost taken aback by that, but I told her that if she didn't take the room I had she wouldn't get anything. She calls ahead now, but I was mortified and shocked she actually tried this stunt, and actually meant it. I was eating ice cream and an old guy walking into the ice cream parlor said, "Oh, that looks good. I'm gonna get a spoon." I smiled and laughed awkwardly, until his damn spoon was in my ice cream. Had a neighbor who was a single guy in his 40s, divorced, had a college-aged daughter that stayed with him half the time. Seemed like they were having a sort of family reunion one weekend, and I saw him talking with others out on his back deck. A little while later I went over to ask to borrow something. His daughter answered and I asked if her dad was there. She said her dad was dead, and I just chuckled and was like, "Haha, yeah right." She just looked at me and turned around crying and went back inside. Her mom, his ex-wife, came out right away and saw I was confused, shocked, and very apologetic. She was really nice about it, saying it had just happened, and was the first time the daughter had had to answer the door. Apparently he had committed suicide. I obviously felt so terrible, apologized profusely. I thought for sure I had just seen him. And the way the daughter had announced it seemed almost lighthearted. Turns out who I saw on the back deck was his brother, who looked a lot like him, and all the family was there for the funeral. Have a relative who got a ton of help from us when they came to this country. Checked in on his family, signed his kid up for sport, helped them move, gave them furniture, gave them heaters when they didn't have heat, etc., etc. My pregnant wife was assembling his dad's bed while he was at work. Once he got on his feet and found some friends he ghosted me. No call, no text, missed my kids' birthdays, not even an invite for a cup of tea. Recently got a call from him trying to sell me a car. That segued into talking about how he wants to move to another city. I'm wondering where he's gonna get the money to do it, but overall like haha, yeah, I heard it's nice. That turned into wanting the down payment to be deposited into his account and or a cosigner. Yeah. After politely declining for the sake of my father, I was told okay, I won't keep you, bye. Edit, this got a lot of attention and I'll add a little bit for context. The one time we genuinely needed him, his family had come over while he was still back home. A relative died suddenly and there wasn't enough time to fly out for the funeral. Where we are from you can't get anything done without a man. A woman just won't be dealt with by key people who are needed, which sucks. He was the closest male relative who could have assisted, was expressly asked to do so, and completely flaked. Just came to the after party and ate the food. That was probably the catalyst that helped wake me up to how he truly was. At a coworker's house playing poker after our NFL fantasy draft. One guy asked where the bathroom was, and off he went. Came back a few minutes later and the host asks if he seriously just took a shit in his house. We all laughed, and turned our attention back to the poker game. He wasn't joking. He was genuinely upset that someone used his bathroom to take a shit. He said it was extremely rude and something you should wait until you get home to do. A friend sent a photo of herself in a hideous wedding dress with "guys, I found my dress," and I completely thought she was joking. I would have responded with lol or a barf emoji, but got caught up and didn't respond for a few hours. When I checked my phone the other bridesmaids had written Gorg love it, etc. And I realized she wasn't joking. I was so relieved that I didn't respond first. Side note, but related, our bridesmaids' dresses were ugly AF and expensive. At least we all looked ridiculous that day. Working in a catalog store in the UK. You pick from the catalog, we bring it out from the warehouse. Lady comes in and orders the single largest thing we keep in store. A shed. Not a particularly big shed as sheds go, but still a shed. Okay madam, if you give me your vehicle's registration number I'll tell the security guys to let you round the back of the store. Park in bay 5 and we'll load it for you. What are you talking about? You have to park around back so we can load it into your vehicle. I don't have a vehicle. Oh, well, we have the numbers for some white van men and taxi services if you'd like to. No, just bring it up, Keith can carry it. She indicates a portly man of around 50 across the room. He waves. Madam. It is a building. With all due respect to your husband, he absolutely cannot carry it by himself. She started getting angry. Demanded that we bring the shed out to her. We did so. It took 3 guys to even lift it. We got it into the lift diagonally, though it trapped a man behind it, and when it came up she said, "What on earth is that?" "That's your shed, madam. My Keith can't carry that." "Yeah, no shit, would you like me to call a van service for you?" She actually just got a refund and left. Getting ready for a road trip. Multiple vehicles, not everyone knows each other. Him, we should exchange phone numbers in case we get separated. Me, oh, I have your number. Got it from Dan. I'll call you quick so you have mine. Call him and hang up as soon as it rings. Him, okay. Got it. Let me call you so you have mine too. Me, what? Him, calls me. Me, confused _look.jpg. Him, did you get it? I joined a work Skype meeting a few minutes late, and when I joined I asked to be filled in on what had been discussed in the meeting so far. One of my colleagues, who is usually a bit of a joker, replied, "Well, boss lady, was just telling everyone about the new expectation that we wear our work uniforms while working from home." I busted out laughing, big hearty guffaws, wiping tears from my eyes. "Alex, that's hilarious. Can you imagine?" Nobody else laughed. "We don't even have cameras in our work from home setups. Why the fuck would we ever wear a uniform working from home?" I work at a call center. Used to work at a big bank that bought out another, somewhat smaller but still pretty big bank about 10 years ago. Some guy came in all pissed off because we didn't send him a new debit card with the new bank's logo on it. They intentionally made it so the old ones would continue working until they were originally set to expire. Said it was embarrassing. I can't be the only person who's gotten upset over this, right? Yeah, homie, you were. I was working for Starbucks, and a customer ordered a caramel Madagascar. So I laughed thinking it was a joke, and repeated it back correctly as a caramel macchiato. He was not joking, and called me pretentious for pronouncing it correctly and to not name drinks hard. To read words. Started coaching college basketball in the fall of 2020. Second day there, girl had been sick and went to the doctor to see if she had COVID. She came to meet with me and the head coach and said jokingly, or at least I thought, "Well, I don't have COVID but I'm pregnant." I laughed thinking she was actually joking, but she was dead serious. My brother telling me I needed to request off the weekend. It was Thursday, because he was getting married, due to his underage fiancée being pregnant. Then when I told him I needed at least a month's notice to request off, he told me to just quit my job. He hasn't spoken to me in a month because his, I guess then fiancée, didn't like me and thought I was trying to steal my brother from her. My boss was understanding since I had been a model employee for the last few years. I got the weekend off. Saturday morning I see my brother, ask him if he was sure he wanted to go through with it. He told me I was no longer invited to the wedding. They were divorced within the year. Tangentially mine, the other day, while sitting at a table outside the Sunset Grill, with advertising for their famous all-day breakfast plastered up the front of the building. An older couple comes up to the host stand outside and asks for a table. The husband speaks up before they are sat and asks, "Do you guys do all-day breakfast?" The host immediately thinks he's just being a typical older gentleman trying to get a laugh. So she does, as anyone who survives off tips would. Which was immediately met with a less than enthusiastic, "What's so funny?" While she tries to compose herself surrounded by signs saying famous all-day breakfast. The wife just looked at him the entire time, asking if he even once looked around him at all today. I had a friend with a very dry sense of humor. One morning, several years ago, he texted something to our group text like XX555TTT4E extras, presumably a butt dial text, right? And then a little while later texted Sri, "I had a stroke," which is exactly the kind of joke he would have made to apologize for the ridiculous text, so I said, "No worries, just lay off the sauce while you're at work." Turns out he'd had a massive stroke and was in the hospital, and had been attempting to text with the right hand only, while wearing a pole socks. He ended up with permanent left-sided hemiplegia, and it's a sad story, and also I felt like a huge asshole that day. Was in an informal meeting with someone that I was doing a project with. We were both self-employed and in the same industry, so our meetings were a lot more casual than a regular office context. He, a healthy active early 60-something, starts talking jokingly about his imminent demise and death with me and the client. Now he's got an odd sense of humor and often jokes about strange stuff, so I smiled and laughed politely. He and the client stop and look at me and say, "Oh, we haven't told you," flushed face. My heart sinks as they share that he has been having strange aphasic episodes, that it's getting worse, and they think he has a couple years left. I'm just a deer in headlights at this point. The meeting quickly ends, and I leave feeling terrible. That was about 6 years ago. He was able to get a diagnosis of a rare form of epilepsy, got on medication, and to my knowledge hasn't had an episode, seizure, since. Still makes weird jokes though. Context: I work in telecom. Memorizing measurements and clearances is very important for my job. I was 22 at the time this happened. My co-worker doing my training was 51. My co-worker is quizzing me on some basic training material and asks how far does A have to be from B? I tell him 1 foot. He looks at me and says that's wrong, it needs to be 12 inches away. I started laughing and jokingly said something along the line of haha, you got me there. Only to turn back to see him looking upset and confused. I asked him if he was good and he said you're a month in and this is very important, you shouldn't be getting this wrong, you have to be 12 inches away, not a foot. I stared at him in disbelief for at least 20 seconds trying to figure out if he was joking or not. He was not. Had to have a very awkward conversation afterwards where I explained that 12 inches and a foot were the same distance. This co-worker was notorious for deflecting responsibility and refusing to admit when he was wrong, so he ended it with well, I guess if you want to think of it that way. I've got a few more similar stories about the guy. Luckily he wasn't my boss, just a coworker that got stuck training me for a while. He somehow lasted well over a year and a half after that before getting fired back in April. By that time I had been promoted and no longer worked in the same department as him. In a strange way, I do miss him sometimes, he certainly was a personality. At a friend's watching television. The friend's older brother and his friend are outside. Suddenly the brother's friend comes barreling inside saying the older brother cut his finger off. We were yeah, sure, then the brother comes in holding his hand. We were still not believing either one of them. So the brother shoves his half a bloody digit in our faces. When my ex-GF told me she was getting a tattoo with my name on it. We were together for only 6 months. I thought she was trying to just say it to sound cute and told her not to do it. BC, we are too young for that kind of stuff, 18 and 19 respectively. But a few days later I met with her and she showed me the tat. One of the many reasons I broke up with her. A very sarcastic, hilarious guy posted about going to see God on Facebook. I replied with something snarky along the lines of the old "Have you found Jesus? I didn't know he was missing" joke. His wife posted it to let everyone know he'd died of a heart attack. I met the dean of a medical school. He was telling me how he always liked math until they started using letters instead of numbers. I thought he was doing like a comedy bit, and he had me rolling. The more he explained himself, the funnier it seemed. Eventually I realized he was serious, and just had a quirky intonations that always made it sound like he was joking. I worked as a supervisor for a travel agency that specialized in cruises. If you booked a cruise online through a 1-800 number that wasn't the cruise line directly, we probably handled your vacation. Lady had called in during the life of the booking and managed to bitch her way to some free on-board credit and a birthday celebration for her husband on my company's dime. Well, the cruise line messed up and did the decorations a day too early. She called from the ship via guest relations to bitch at us about it. One of the complaints was the decorations were ugly. They were basically glorified Party City decorations but done in that cruise line branding. She demanded it be fixed. I thought she was only talking about them being up too early. I told her I could ask the cruise line to put them up the next day instead. She then asked how I was going to fix the other part. I was confused at first about what she was asking. She then proceeded to start all over about the ugliness of the decorations. I straight up asked her how she would like me to get her new decorations that didn't involve a helicopter or me swimming out to the ship. After that she finally let me get off the line. Sent an email to the rest of the supervisor team saying that woman gets zero comp or refunds ever again. This guy came back professing his love for me in the most passive-aggressive way after ghosting me for 2 months. No calls answered, no texts, nothing. When he ghosted me, I was heartbroken. Took some time to myself to heal and stay single, you know the drill. He texted me out of blue, asking if we could talk. We met up and he told me he did some soul searching and dated a few girls and went to therapy, and told me he realized I was the one and said how I'd regret not giving him a second chance because I had no clue how happy he'd make me. I thought this was some ploy to get me to sleep with him until he proposed immediately after. There's a kinda inside joke that a teacher at my high school was slashed as a predator and had actual CP stored on his computer. Obviously it isn't funny, you know, but I always laughed it off and thought they were making shit up. Stopped laughing when he was arrested for showing high school girls his high school girl porn collection. I've had a substance abuse issue since I was a teenager. My boss knows about it because I've worked for her for almost 7 years and have been in and out of rehab. She's been great to make sure I still have a job every time I come back. It makes me miserable all the time, so she decided to make light of it one day a couple years ago, so we started joking around about it. If I was a few minutes late, she'd ask me if she needed to kick my dealer's ass for taking so long to get my pills to me. If I clumsily did something, she'd ask if it's because I was high or because I needed to get high. It really helped me feel more comfortable and stay honest with her when I'm struggling. So one day I came in after going on a huge binge, and because I'd gotten so up, I didn't realize I'd missed a shift. Straight up no call, no show, the only time I've done that. She approached me with a wicked glare on her face and told me if I didn't get my ass into rehab and take it seriously this time, she was going to fire me. I laughed at first, but it didn't take any more than 2 seconds to realize she wasn't playing. I was in rehab for a month and stayed clean for 5 months after that. When I was in high school, I worked as a cashier at a big box store. An older woman was checking out at my lane one day. I was just scanning things as they came down the belt without paying much attention. This woman had put a ton of baby food on my belt, but I didn't think anything of it. I'm making the usual small talk when the elderly woman goes, "Well, this is the only thing my husband can eat anymore," and gestured toward the jars of baby food. I laughed out loud thinking at first she was joking, until I saw her face. I was shocked and felt horrible when I realized she was dead serious. I apologized, finished ringing her up, and then felt very sad for her husband and for her. On my second date with a guy, he told me he saw a UFO once and was absolutely positive. Aliens exist. I asked him to tell me about the UFO, and he said it had blinking lights, and as it moved slowly across the sky, it left a trail of dust behind it. What he was describing was clearly a plane, so I laughed, assuming he was messing with me. This upset him, and he asked why I was laughing at him. It really was a UFO. When I realized he was serious, I asked, "Are you sure it wasn't just a plane? It sounds like a plane." His response, "Oh, yeah. I suppose it might have been." We broke up later that week. A buddy of mine introduced me to a girl at a social gathering. She was very upbeat, outgoing and excited to talk to me, but I was busy with something else and only said hello and "Excuse me, but I am very busy." About 10 minutes later she comes up to me as I am talking with a woman I knew very well, and she is now the total opposite of when we first met. Angry, arms crossed, tense, that sort of thing. Within seconds she is laying into me for my inappropriate behavior and informing me that I needed to treat her with respect considering our relationship. "What relationship are you talking about?" I asked. "The fact that you are my soulmate. We are engaged and going to be married 20/20/4x. I can't remember the date she had already picked out." I openly laughed in her face for a few seconds until I saw the look in her eyes. I recovered enough to stutter out, "You're joking, right? Why the hell would I joke about our wedding?" She demanded. "Because he is already married," my wife yelled as she held up her left hand, ring prominently displayed. Turns out my buddy knew that she had had a crush on me for months and was nowhere close to emotionally or mentally stable. He thought it would be funny. Years ago, 20 plus, yes, I'm old, I was driving several of my friends around, including two that had recently started dating. He was kind of a ladies' man that went through girlfriends, especially younger ones, constantly. She was a freak that came from very conservative parents. I knew him better, since high school, but they were both good friends. Neither were what I would call ready to settle down. During the drive they revealed they were engaged and they wanted me to be the best man. I honestly laughed. Then I saw in the mirror that they were serious. I felt bad, but I agreed to do it. The ceremony was very fancy and nice, and I did the best I could. From what I've heard, the recording of my toast was actually kind of funny. Fast forward several years and they ended up in a nasty divorce. By then I'd discovered he'd been an abusive piece of shit for years, with her and many others. Several years after that, after I'd cut him off completely, I was horrified, though not surprised, to be told he'd murdered his latest girlfriend, then killed himself. I'm never going to live down that he had me fooled for so long. If I could go back, I'd tell her to get that away from him, and warn anyone I could that he was toxic as Now I just consider it a lesson learned, and I'll help anyone I can if they're in a similar situation. I'm a geophysicist and was working at the time for a major oil company. I was paired up with a colleague who is a geologist to work on a project. One time we were taking a lunch break and chatting about our project when another one of our co-workers, a drilling engineer, sits down at our table and starts to talk to us about the flat earth theory. I thought he was joking around at first, so I laughed. Turns out he was dead serious about trying to convince a geophysicist and a geologist that the earth was flat. We both lost all respect for this idiot that day. I used to deliver pizza. People all the time would be like, "Oh, you took more than 30 to 45 minutes, I can have this for free, right?" I think most of the time they were joking, but also half hoping I would say yes. Anyway, we were a small family-owned pizzeria and didn't do that. One day it was super busy and I took a few deliveries at the same time. One of the deliveries was farther than I thought we even delivered. Since it was so far out, I went to that one last. It was a hotel. Hotels and apartments usually suck trying to find where to deliver. So I tried calling and this guy didn't answer. Finally I got directions to the guy from the front desk. This tacked on probably an extra 10 minutes at least. I get there and this guy was demanding to get his pizza for free because I took so long. I just kind of chuckled because I always played to the side that people were joking. He told me he waited over an hour and a half for his pizza. I know I didn't take that long to deliver it, so I lightly said, "Oh, I don't believe that." He looked at me with the most serious look on his face and almost started yelling at me that he waited over an hour and a half and that it was outrageous. When I saw he was serious, I apologized for the untimely delivery. He said something like, "You aren't sorry, you just said you don't even believe me." I told him it was a common joke people made when a pizza took a little extra time and agreed with him that the delivery time was outrageous and didn't reflect our usual business. I didn't get a tip on that delivery, embarrassed smiley face, and I felt bad for how I treated the guy and that his pizza was very late. When I got back to the pizzeria, I asked about the delivery and was told that we don't deliver that far anyway, but a new employee had just gone and accepted the order, so we honored it. But the other delivery drivers just didn't even bother to take it because it was so far out, so it was neglected until my boss saw and was like, "Hey, you need to take this delivery." When I worked at a call center, I was a supervisor that was sent the escalation calls. I had one lady call in and was demanding a return label from us. Usually no problem, but I couldn't find her in the system. I asked for all of the information needed to find an order and then some, but still nothing. Finally, after 20 minutes of back and forth, I asked her for the return address on her box. She said it said an address and said it says Amazon on here for some reason. I laughed, we were not Amazon, and said that it would be weird since we're not Amazon. Dead silence. What do you mean you're not Amazon? It doesn't matter anyway since you guys sell the same item. Just send me a return label and give me my money back. Ma'am, that's not how any of this works. A huge hissy fit followed by an abrupt hang up. I still can't believe people are out there, living amongst us, who do stuff like this with their full chest.